Now is the right time to pardon Polly Francis. That was the message of Senator Alma Francis-Heyliger and the rest of the Committee on Rules and Judiciary after they voted unanimously to advance a bill requesting the President of the United States posthumously pardon a local civil rights activist. Rothschild Francis was a St. Thomas native who, according to author Dr. Edward Brown in his book The Wrongful Imprisonment of Rothschild Francis, was, quote, the most powerful activist in the 1920s.
Though Rothschild Francis had only the equivalent of a middle school education, he made a concerted effort to learn U.S. history and constitutional law to better prepare himself to advocate effectively on behalf of Virgin Islanders. Mr. Francis won a St. Thomas and John council seat and began writing a resolution requesting the removal of naval governance. The Organic Act of March 3, 1917 gave legal authority for the governance of the Virgin Islands to the President of the United States and allowed the President to appoint judges, governors, and administrative officials to administer governance over the Virgin Islands.
Francis, who was 25 years old when the formal transfer of the Danish West Indies to the United States of America took place, witnessed on Transfer Day, March 31, 1917, a group of Marines allegedly run through the city of Charlotte brandishing rifles and instilling fear among the local population. Following this incident, Francis began to advocate for the removal of the naval administration in favor of a permanent civilian government. He reportedly believed that racial tensions in the territory could be ameliorated through the application of constitutional rights and the adoption of self-government.
This was a man who heard the wailing and lamentations of his people, witnessed the conflagration of assaults, brutal acts of intimidation and violence upon his people, and who swore before the altar of God to give every drop of his blood in the struggle against the perpetuation of naval rule over our Virgin Islands. He pressed forward undaunted, valiant, and focused on getting civilian rule, civilian government established in this territory.
Brown said that Francis had unprecedented access to members of Congress, and articles published in his Emancipator newspaper were read across the United States. It was exactly this expansive power that would make Francis an enemy to some in high positions who conspired to persecute and ultimately prosecute him with an aim to silence his voice.
Rothschild Francis fiercely advocated for civil and human rights for Virgin Islanders, and his advocacy made him a threat to several governors. Rear Admiral James Oliver, the first American governor for the Virgin Islands, reported in 1919 to the Director of Naval Intelligence in Washington that Rothschild Francis was a sort of half-witted Negro, apparently without an occupation, constantly causing agitation among the ignorant class. Governor Oliver concluded his report by stating, "I therefore earnestly recommend that the Attorney General be requested to send a capable, trusted, and energetic representative to carry out prosecutions."
Those prosecutions did occur with Francis as a target. He was sued for libel after the publication of a report of alleged misconduct by a police officer. He was denied a jury trial on the grounds that the right to such, guaranteed by the Sixth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, did not extend to residents of the Virgin Islands. At the conclusion of his trial, District Court Judge George Washington Williams found him guilty of libel as well as of contempt of court and sentenced him to a $100 fine and 30 days in jail.
It is clear that all Mr. Francis did was fight for the political, educational, and social upliftment of his people. He was arrested, assaulted without cause, charged and convicted without cause in deceitful and dishonest judicial proceedings.
Francis appealed his conviction, and the Third Circuit Court of Appeals sided with him with regards to the libel conviction, with Justice Woolley, who authored the opinion of the appeals panel, accusing the lower court judge of having a, quote, desire to curb comments on public officers and public affairs, influence his decision to convict Francis. However, the court affirmed his contempt of court conviction. That wasn't the end of Francis's legal troubles, however. He was charged with embezzlement, and it is these circumstances the legislation by Senator Francis-Heyliger refers to as suspicious. Once again, he landed before Justice Williams, who once again denied Francis a jury trial. He was convicted, and once he had completed his sentence of incarceration, Francis left the Virgin Islands for New York. There's no indication that he ever returned to his St. Thomas home or to the Virgin Islands as a whole. It is this history and his constant advocacy for a better quality of life for Black Virgin Islanders that led to a statue of Francis being installed in Charlotte Amalie. Quote, "What Marcus Garvey is to many of us today, Rothschild Francis was then," Brown argued, noting that Francis's exoneration will send a message to those who did him wrong over a century ago.
It says to especially the Danes that you don't get a free pass. You can run, you can hide, you can do everything. But the day of reckoning for these atrocities and for the U.S. government with President Woodrow Wilson and the others up until 1936 has to be addressed. And our children and our people can see the greatness of our ancestors and realize how great we are as a people.
Bill 340295 had originally requested Francis's pardon from the governor of the territory, but based on the text of the Organic Act of March 3, 1917, only the sitting president of the United States can exonerate Rothschild Francis. After accepting the necessary amendment to the text, the bill's sponsor, Senator Francis-Heyliger, wrapped up the day's debate.
When I hear of all the things that Mr. Francis had to endure, when I hear of all the things from the testimony and additional information that was shared here today, we as the people of the territory should not be nothing short of proud. This is the type of lineage we came from. These are the type of people that stood up and fought. And we have to understand as members of this institution that we always have to do what is right whenever the time is right. And right now is the right time.